Your four favorites are Speed Racer, Blade Runner 2049, Interstellar, and Collateral. My top choice for you is Contact, and I could just say it's the original Interstellar and leave it at that, but I'm going to attempt to connect it to all four of your favorites, even if some of these connections are a bit of a stretch. It has some pretty cool visuals like Speed Racer, and I'm thinking of one scene in particular, but I'm also not trying to spoil anything. Like Blade Runner 2049, it's a sci-fi film where the protagonist is in pursuit of the truth, but in Blade Runner 2049, Kay is searching for the truth about replicants and himself, and the protagonist in Contact is in pursuit of the truth regarding extraterrestrial life. Like Collateral, the protagonist experiences some pretty big moral dilemmas, and like Interstellar, it's a sci-fi film that involves traveling through wormholes. Matthew McConaughey is in it. It does some interesting things with time dilation and the theory of relativity, and a father-daughter relationship is at the heart of the film. Blade Runner is based on the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, and obviously some of the characters from Blade Runner carry over into the sequel. Total Recall is based on the short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, also by Philip K. Dick. And like Blade Runner 2049, a lot of the story revolves around artificial memories and holograms. Like Speed Racer, it has some noteworthy visual effects. In fact, this film won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, just like Interstellar. And like Collateral, there's a subway chase scene. Speaking of Paul Verhoeven movies, I also want to recommend RoboCop. The screenwriter for this movie got the idea for this film when he was on the set of the original Blade Runner. So naturally, this film has a lot in common with Blade Runner 2049, including themes related to identity, memory, humanity versus machine, and what it means to be human. This movie also explores corporate greed and corruption like Speed Racer. And I just want to throw in one more Paul Verhoeven film because I think you'd have a lot of fun with Starship Troopers. Minority Report came to mind because you have a movie based on the work of Philip K. Dick and a Tom Cruise movie in your favorites. I think you should check out Beyond the Black Rainbow because it's a combination of trippy visuals like Speed Racer and science fiction like Blade Runner 2049 and Interstellar. You had Tron Legacy marked as watched, but not the original Tron, and that's another one that came to mind for its unique visual style and sci-fi themes. If you combine the racing aspect of Speed Racer with the sci-fi themes in your favorites, you'd get Death Race 2000. I didn't want to recommend a bunch of racing movies because I feel like that's not what you love about Speed Racer, but just in case I'm wrong, I'll recommend one more, and that's Rush. I was conflicted about recommending this next one because I know a lot of people who hate it, but a lot of people hated Speed Racer when that came out, so I'm going to take the chance. In your review for Speed Racer, the way you described some of the racing scenes made me think of Hardcore Henry, mainly because it kind of reminded me of my favorite pull quote ever. But not only does this movie have this chaotic, over-the-top style, but it also delves into some of the sci-fi themes that are explored in Blade Runner 2049. Speed Racer is one of the most colorful films I've seen in a long time, so I was trying to think of other films with stunning visuals and incredible use of color, and Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters came to mind. From a story standpoint, it's very different from your favorites, but there are some philosophical themes in your favorites, so I think you might appreciate this one. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World also came to mind when I was thinking of Speed Racer. I think Speed Racer does a great job of capturing the vibe of an anime and manga series, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is based on a graphic novel series, and the movie really leans into that with this energetic style. Speed Racer's commentary on capitalism made me think of They Live, which is a sci-fi film set in a dystopian future like Interstellar and Blade Runner 2049. It's also just a fun movie that's a little over the top like Speed Racer. Speaking of which, another fun, wild, eccentric, and over-the-top movie that I think you'd enjoy since you like Speed Racer is Love Exposure. Ex Machina, like Blade Runner 2049, is a sci-fi film that explores the consequences of human beings using technology to create androids, artificial intelligence, robots, replicants, what have you. So they both raise interesting questions about what it means to be human, consciousness, emotions, autonomy, and the conflict between creator and creation. Moon, like Blade Runner 2049, is a thought-provoking sci-fi film involving identity, isolation, loneliness, and self-discovery. And fun fact, this movie was directed by Duncan Jones, David Bowie's son. And before David Bowie passed away, he was the top choice to play the role that eventually went to Jared Leto in Blade Runner 2049. Speaking of David Bowie, The Man Who Fell to Earth also seems up your alley. Since you like Interstellar, I think you'd enjoy The Abyss. The other day, I was thinking about how I wish Tom Cruise would play more villains because Collateral is my favorite performance from him. He's always playing the hero, but I just find him way more compelling as a villain. And you expressed a similar sentiment in your review for Collateral. Unfortunately, I don't think any other Tom Cruise movie is going to top this one for you, but in an interview, he said he watched The Samurai to prepare for this role. In Speed Racer, the characters drink milk because there's an Indy 500 tradition where the winners drink milk after the race. And I was thinking how I rarely see movies where the good guys are drinking milk because it's become sort of a trope where villains drink milk. An example of that is No Country for Old Men, but milk is not the reason why I'm recommending this one. I think you'd like No Country for Old Men because like Collateral, it's a thriller with that cat cat and mouse dynamic and some existential themes. And coincidentally, Javier Bardem is in both movies.